And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis.
You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me, and it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, the state, the U.S.
It all started with a lie. Or at least, that's how it looked to thousands of young people who showed up in Tampa, Florida, to attend a Turning Point USA event, a massive gathering of high school and college students excited to hear from conservative speakers. But back in a cozy television studio in New York, something very different was happening. On The View, a group of daytime hosts casually dropped a bombshell. They linked the entire event to neo-Nazi protesters who had been outside the venue. Just like that, the kids inside weren't students anymore, they were suspects, lumped in with some of the worst labels you can throw at a person. And it wasn't said with caution. It was tossed out with the same breezy confidence used to introduce celebrity gossip or joke about politics. No sources, no care, just outrage and claps.
But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
What happened next turned a regular youth summit into a national controversy. Turning Point's founder didn't take the accusation lightly. A cease and desist letter was sent to ABC. Lawyers were involved. The internet lit up. It wasn't just about defending a political group, it was about 5,000 students suddenly being dragged through the mud on national television for something they had nothing to do with. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women, they are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid or uneducated.
Now here's where things really start heating up. After the backlash began to snowball online, The View suddenly changed its tone. Whoopi Goldberg, one of the show's loudest and most recognizable voices, delivered a public apology. But let's be real, it wasn't exactly heartfelt. She sat at the table reading off her lines like she was reciting the weather. She admitted that she had lumped the students in with the protesters and said, "My bad, I'm sorry." That was it. No deep explanation, no real ownership. Just a quick oops before cutting to commercial like nothing happened.
Now we begin with a shocking apology just a short time ago from the ladies of The View to Turning Point USA. A war of words broke out after the conservative group was rallying the next generation of voters at its youth summit in Tampa, Florida this weekend. And the liberal panel just couldn't help themselves. The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo-Nazis who showed up outside the event.
People weren't buying it, especially when it looked like the show was just trying to avoid legal trouble. The apology came only after Turning Point threatened a lawsuit. Without that legal pressure, would they have even said a word? And while Whoopi tried to keep her signature confidence, something was off. The usual buzz, the clapping audience, the smooth transition sit all felt shakier than usual.
President, open your You let them in and you knew what they were. Right. So you are complicit. I want to make a quick clarification about the neo-Nazi Turning Point event. They were outside protesters. My point was more metaphorical, that you embraced them at your thing, I felt.
Well, fast forward to this morning. The host apologized before quickly cutting to commercial.
It was like the studio lights got a little dimmer that day. You could almost feel the tension in the room. Outside the show, people were asking the real question: how could a group of daytime television hosts so carelessly accuse thousands of teenagers of being associated with hate groups? And why was the apology so flat, so rehearsed, so empty? It didn't feel like accountability. It felt like damage control. Then came the part no one expected. Charlie Kirk didn't show up to The View, didn't scream on social media, didn't go on a rant. He simply turned on his camera, sat in front of his mic, and calmly fired back from his own platform. No yelling, no drama, just a cool, collected breakdown of what actually happened.
Sean, something that struck me in the cease and desist letter was the sentence that specifically The View host insidiously and cavalierly stated that TPUSA let the neo into its event, metaphorically embraced them, and it went on. Insidiously and cavalierly. And I felt that perfectly summed up exactly what those women were saying, which is something so deeply toxic and also so lightly thrown out there.
And so false. I mean, these were protesters outside of the event, right? They couldn't get in. These were not neo-Nazis inside of Turning Point USA. They were protesting outside on public grounds, and Turning Point tried to remove them.
And somehow, that was way more brutal than any face-to-face shouting match. He didn't make it about himself. He made it about the 5,000 students who spent their summer weekend attending a political event and suddenly had to live with the false label of being associated with neo-Nazis. He asked the question that The View never did. What kind of damage does that do to a 16 or 17-year-old's future? And while the show brushed it off like it was a mistake, Kirk was not letting it go. He said they were still talking to top legal teams, because this wasn't just a television moment, it was defamation, public slander.
I don't want to say too much, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Can I tell you something? Like, I've had quite a few people contact me about that particular post. Like, I'm sure I have 1/100th of what you're getting, but people are contacting me about cabinet posts. I'm like, I got
look,
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I'm actually, after this conversation, heading to Mar-a-Lago for a week, and we have a lot to sift through, and if I could be helpful, I have asked. I want to be actively involved in all things education, as you can imagine.
And if the hosts could get away with this once, what's stopping them from doing it again? That clip of him talking calmly, confidently went viral. It wasn't just a defense, it was a warning shot. He didn't just want an apology, he wanted accountability. And this time, the internet was listening. As Kirk's video started making the rounds online, something strange began happening. Not just views and shares, but actual momentum. People who had never even heard of the Turning Point event suddenly knew all about it. And not because of the mainstream media, but because of a clip from a guy in a hoodie calmly pointing out the hypocrisy of The View.
Do you think if a liberal came to speak at University of Kentucky, they'd give an open mic like I just did to a conservative and had a discussion like this?
I certainly hope they would.
No, they wouldn't. Because speech is not a left-wing value. That is why they have to deploy shock troops called Antifa to go after everywhere I go. When I go to University of California, Davis next week, there has to be 120 police officers because of the threats, the violent threats of liberals that want me dead, that want to disrupt our events.
And right at the center of that storm was Whoopi Goldberg. For years, she sat comfortably in her seat on The View, tossing out hot takes with that signature mix of sarcasm and certainty. The applause was always there, like a safety net. The audience clapped when they were supposed to, nodded at the right moments, and everything she said seemed to land without pushback. But not this time. Kirk's quiet takedown didn't just challenge her, it exposed her. Suddenly, Whoopi wasn't the fearless queen of daytime commentary. She was someone who had made a serious accusation without facts. And once that clip spread, so did the doubt. About her judgment, about the show's integrity, about how many other claims had been made without real evidence. It was the digital version of someone walking up to a castle and tapping on the walls only to find out they were made of cardboard. And from that point on, people didn't look at Whoopi the same way. But the real turning point wasn't just what Charlie Kirk said it was, how he said it. He didn't call names, he didn't mock or yell, he simply laid out facts. Real facts. He talked about the dangerous assumptions being made on The View, especially when Sunny Hostin jumped in with her own hot take mocking, what she called uneducated white women who supported Trump. As if not going to college automatically made someone dumb or misinformed. That hit a nerve. Kirk fired back with a very clear message. Not having a degree doesn't mean you lack intelligence. In fact, he argued that everyday working Americans, what he called the muscular class, often have more real-world wisdom than some of the most elite college grads. And while Sunny sat comfortably in her studio chair making smug jabs, he pointed to the people who build, fix, and move this country forward without needing a diploma to tell them they're smart. He also brought attention to what gets taught in universities, no ideologies like men giving birth, identity over biology, and questioned how that kind of education was being treated as the gold standard of intelligence. The internet lit up, people shared stories. Working moms, construction workers, business owners all chiming in with one loud message. We're not stupid. That clip spread like wildfire because it didn't just defend conservatives, it defended dignity. And it made the table at The View look dangerously out of touch. As more people watched Kirk's response, the momentum shifted hard and fast. He didn't just point out one contradiction. He unpacked the entire segment like he was building a shelf out of lies and snapping each piece into place. Piece by piece, he showed where The View twisted facts, exaggerated claims, or just straight up made things up, and he did it without flinching. No dramatic pauses, no need for applause, just cold, structured truth. That's what made it hit so hard. It wasn't just about proving The View wrong, it was about showing how easily people in power, on mainstream platforms, get away with saying whatever they want, knowing they'll never get challenged. They speak, the audience claps, and the world moves on. But this time, the world didn't move on. The clips of Kirk's takedown exploded across social media. TikToks, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, it was everywhere. People edited the segments like trailers for a courtroom showdown. And for once, it felt like someone was finally checking the receipts on national television commentary. Not by storming a set or shouting over someone's words, but by calmly holding up the facts and letting the silence speak. It was surgical, and that made it brutal, because the louder The View had been, the more ridiculous it looked in comparison. Then came the apology again. This time, the full panel at The View addressed it. Not just Whoopi. They admitted they had made a mistake by linking Turning Point USA to the neo-Nazi protesters. But the way they did it? It wasn't a moment of clarity. It felt like they were reading a legal note handed to them during a commercial break. It was dry, fast, almost like they were racing to get it out of the way. Behind the scenes, everyone knew why it happened. The cease and desist letter had landed hard. It wasn't just a warning, it was a serious legal threat. And that kind of thing makes even the boldest hosts choose their words more carefully. But it was too late. By the time The View offered their apology, the damage had already gone viral. Viewers across the country were now asking, if this show made that kind of claim so casually, how many other claims have gone unchecked? The illusion had cracked. That polished, powerful panel of women who once seemed untouchable now looked like a group just trying not to get sued. And people noticed, especially the ones who had blindly trusted what came out of that studio. Suddenly, every dramatic claim, every loud declaration was being met with suspicion instead of claps. And that's when you know the spell is breaking. You could feel the shift in the air. The next few episodes of The View felt different. The usual rhythm was off. Punchlines didn't land. The energy was lower. Even the crowd's applause seemed thinner, like they were waiting to be told how to feel. Whoopi still showed up, still delivered her fiery monologues, but the spark wasn't the same. Her confidence had a crack in it. Her once dominant tone now sounded a little too rehearsed, like someone replaying a highlight reel while knowing the best moments were already behind her. It wasn't that she had been screamed at. It wasn't a meltdown on live television. It was something worse, quiet exposure. She had been fact-checked not by another co-host, not by a guest, but by the entire internet. And once that happened, everything changed. The studio didn't feel like a safe haven anymore. The commentary didn't sound so bold. Even the smallest slip-up now came with the risk of becoming the next viral clip. The same tools they used to dominate the conversation, applause, emotion, loud certainty, suddenly felt like shields that didn't work anymore. It was the kind of shift you can't fake your way out of. You either win the crowd back with truth, or you watch them drift away with every clip that proves you've been bluffing. And Charlie Kirk? He never even had to enter the studio to make it happen. That's what made it so devastating. Charlie didn't show up to The View, didn't challenge Whoopi face-to-face, didn't even step inside the same building. He hit record on his podcast, dropped the facts, and let the internet do the rest. It was a passive takedown, no need for shouting, no dramatic walk-offs, just a clear, deliberate takedown from a distance. And it worked. Because the internet isn't like daytime television. It doesn't need claps to decide who's right. It needs proof. And when that proof showed up in Kirk's response with timestamps, quotes, legal threats, and basic logic, the audience started asking questions. Dangerous ones. Like, did she just make that up? Or why is no one calling this out on the show? The producers must have felt it too. Suddenly, the topics got safer, the tone more careful. The edge that The View once had turned soft, like everyone was trying to avoid saying the next thing that could get clipped, posted, and shredded online. It was like someone passed around a silent memo that said, "Let's not go viral again, for the wrong reasons." And in that silence, people heard the loudest message of all. The invincible fortress of applause and hot takes had a leak. A quiet, undeniable leak. And for the first time in years, Whoopi and her co-hosts looked like they knew it. The real punch wasn't even what Charlie Kirk said it was, what he proved. He showed that you don't need a television studio, a makeup crew, or a perfectly timed commercial break to speak the truth. All you need is a camera, a Wi-Fi connection, and the guts to say what everyone else is too afraid to. And that scared people. Because for years, shows like The View acted like the final word. They'd toss around labels, drop half-baked takes, and the audience would just go along with it. No pushback, no pause. Just claps. But now, someone outside that echo chamber was doing what millions of viewers had been screaming at their screens for years. Check the facts, break the bubble, say what others won't. Charlie exposed more than just one false claim. He showed how thin the foundation of The View's authority really was. He didn't argue, he exposed. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Suddenly, the viewers weren't watching a trusted panel of strong, informed women. They were watching a group that got caught, panicked, and tried to sweep it under the rug. But it was too late. Because this wasn't just about one bad segment. It was about years of unchallenged power finally meeting one calm voice that had the receipts and wasn't afraid to drop them. What made this even worse for The View was that they couldn't fight back not without making it worse. The internet had the clips, the screenshots, the legal letter, the facts. Everything was out in the open. If they tried to argue, they'd only pour gasoline on the fire. So instead, they did what mainstream media does when it gets cornered. They blinked, smiled, and kept going like nothing happened. But the audience didn't forget. The internet never forgets. Weeks passed, but that video, the one where Charlie Kirk calmly dismantled their entire narrative, kept circulating. People kept referencing it, using it in arguments, stitching it into TikToks and comment threads. It became a symbol, a moment when someone actually stood up to the daytime television machine and didn't flinch. Meanwhile, Whoopi kept showing up on set. The smile was still there, the tone still strong, but you could tell. Something had changed. That untouchable energy was gone. There was a shadow now. A pause that didn't used to be there, like she knew any wrong word could become the next viral firestorm. And Charlie? He just moved on, like nothing happened. Like a guy who took down a fortress and didn't bother to stick around to watch it fall. That's how you know it landed. When the fallout is louder than the impact, you've hit something real. And here's the thing, Charlie didn't just go viral, he broke something. Not just in the view, but in the illusion that shows like it are bulletproof. He didn't scream, didn't rage, didn't chase clout. He dropped one clear clip packed with facts, and suddenly, the spotlight turned. Now they were on defense. Now they were being questioned. And the internet, that wild, ruthless arena of digital warriors, smelled blood. Clips of the takedown were passed around like treasure. YouTubers made reaction videos. Reddit threads exploded. People who had never watched The View in their lives were now picking apart every sentence, every smug smile, every brave comment from the table. The show was being audited by the people, and the people were not kind. But here's what made it even more brutal. It wasn't a big moment. It wasn't a meltdown or a scream. It was subtle. Quiet. The kind of breakdown where the next time someone delivers a dramatic line, it's followed not by applause, but by awkward silence. The kind of moment where even the producers hesitate, where the fire dies a little, where the fear of going viral for the wrong reason lingers in the air like smoke. The confidence didn't collapse in one day. It leaked out slowly, bit by bit, and everyone watching could tell they weren't clapping the same way anymore. It was like someone pulled back the curtain on daytime TV and behind all the glitter and polished lines was just a room full of people playing pretend. The cease and desist letter that Turning Point USA sent wasn't just a legal move, it was a mirror, and what it reflected was ugly. It showed how casually the View panel, especially Whoopi and Sunny, threw out labels like neo-Nazis with no thought about the real people on the other end. High school kids, college students, teenagers who just wanted to be politically engaged. Charlie Kirk made sure the public didn't forget that detail. These weren't public figures. These weren't politicians. These were kids, 5,000 of them. And because of one lazy segment on a daytime talk show, they were suddenly being dragged through one of the worst accusations you can make in modern media. The letter used sharp language, insidiously and cavalierly. It captured exactly what people saw on their screens. A group of women sitting comfortably, tossing out toxic claims like they were nothing, like it was just another Monday. And the fallout was felt in the studio. You could see it in the side glances, the pauses, the loss of rhythm. Because once the internet turns its eye on you, there's no hiding. And in this case, the crowd didn't need to shout back. The silence was louder than any words. The most haunting part? It wasn't just Whoopi's awkward glance off camera or the lack of applause after her usual fire-starting lines. It was the fact that the entire vibe of the show had shifted and no one had to say a word. The audience felt it. The co-hosts felt it. Even the producers, behind the scenes, seemed to tighten the reins. Safer topics, less edge, more scripted laughs and fewer brave declarations. It was like someone handed out a quiet memo that said, "Don't go viral again. We can't afford another one." And while the show tried to move on, the damage was done. The View was no longer the untouchable queen of midday television. It was just another show trying to avoid getting dragged. The armor of applause had cracked, and the illusion that these daytime commentators were speaking undeniable truth was shattered by one guy with a webcam and a well-organized argument. Charlie didn't just bring facts, he brought clarity. While Whoopi and her co-hosts relied on emotion and crowd reaction, he pointed to actual contradictions, calmly, without flinching. And once you see someone pick apart a lie that smoothly, you can't go back to pretending it was just a misunderstanding. He didn't yell, he didn't storm the stage. He just dropped truth into the stream and watched the empire of applause slowly collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. And just like that, the final crack split wide open. Because here's the truth, The View didn't lose in a debate. There was no dramatic face-off, no live confrontation. They lost in a monologue they never saw coming, delivered in a different time-lineone where facts matter more than feelings and receipts speak louder than applause. The irony? Whoopi wasn't even in the room. Charlie Kirk didn't need to sit across from her or argue on set. He dropped his video, and the internet carried it like a wrecking ball straight through their credibility. It wasn't just a takedown, it was a reveal. A moment that showed how fragile the setup really was. And once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. That's the danger of echo chambers. When you only hear your own voice, you start to think it's a choir. But outside that studio, viewers were comparing notes, checking facts, rewinding clips. It was like the audience finally woke up and started grading the show instead of just clapping along. What once looked like strong, righteous commentary now felt like a performance, and with every pause, every cautious joke, every shaky glance around the table, you could feel it. The spell was broken. The power wasn't in the studio anymore. It was in the hands of the audience, and they were watching everything. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.